Good afternoon. My name's Jonathan Norman from the Major Projects Association, and I'm delighted to welcome one of my heroes, David Clutterbuck, to talk about coaching and mentoring. David, I think it's far easier if you introduce yourself rather than I do. So would you like to do so?
Well, I've got these days. I usually introduce myself as probably the only survivor from the very origins of coaching and mentoring, who isn't either dead, deaf, or demented. Um, and I'm certainly going deaf. And you could argue as to whether I'm demented or not. But I'm having a lot of fun bringing together the perspective that you're able to bring from having been in this whole area for 45 years or more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's coincidental, but I saw that you published your first book in 1981, which was actually the year when the Major Projects Association was founded. So
Yeah.
there's a nice kind of serendipity associated with that. And I thought I'd just get you to reflect across that period. Um, how would you describe the kind of way that coaching and mentoring has developed since your early days and where we are today?
Well, way back in those days, nobody had heard of coaching. I mean, or coaching from its origins was a very directive way of it was instruction. It was sports instruction, basically, and very much it was telling people what to do or showing them what to do. And mentoring was all very informal. You
Yes,
didn't have structured mentoring programs, but depending where you were, if you're in the States, they tended to be about the power dimension and doing things for people. So they got an idea of mentoring there, but overseeing the career of a young man was the quote that the quote that comes out from the study in 1978. But in Europe, it was very much still true to the concept of wisdom. And having conversations with people that enabled you using your wisdom to help somebody else become wiser. Um,
right.
very different perspectives. And it's only in the mid 1990s, late 1990s, that coaching started to be or the predominance of coaching, the art, what we read in the literature, was really much more like we see it now, a conversation with somebody, a goal-oriented coach, or an outcome-oriented conversation, because it doesn't have to come out with a goal. It may be that you come out with some way further thinking. In fact, one of the big problems we see is that coaches who are overly goal obsessed actually do more harm than good.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Um, I mean, such a wonderful collection of frameworks and models in this book. Um, I wondered, it's a bit unfair, but do you have a favorite or a couple of favorites, a couple of go-to models that you would kind of look to?
One of my favorites is the diversity awareness ladder. And that's the 5 different levels of interaction that we have with other people, from fear through awareness to tolerance, to acceptance, yeah, and to appreciation. And the way that we have that, the conversation we have inside ourselves predicates the conversation we're likely to have with them. So first we have to have a conversation with ourselves. If it's a fear, well, why am I afraid of this person? Are they afraid of me? And then you can have a different conversation with them. But it brings it all back to conversation. And I think everything that I've done over the last 45 years or more has been around helping people to have the conversations that they really need to have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm delighted to hear that because that's fundamental to what I do and the way that I approach knowledge sharing is it's all about conversations and often questions, really.
Yeah.
You know,
So one good question is worth 10 good answers.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. One of my great heroes, Eddie Obeng, talks about this idea of the world after midnight, which he kind of puts at somewhere between 2000 and 2010, depending on the organization. And that's the time when an organization's capacity for learning was overtaken by the speed of change.
Yeah.
Um, and
Nice.
I wondered how coaching and mentoring fits into that environment where we no longer know what we need to know, as it were.
I mean, one of the things that's holding us up is the obsession with the individual. You know, all the reward systems tend to be based on individuals. The promotion systems are based on individuals. And that doesn't help, because actually the team is much more important. In a survey we did 2 years ago now, 80% of HR directors and CEOs said we have to get away from the focus on the individual and focus much more on teams. So there's a big need to get that agility and flexibility. So that's why team coaching is expanding so fast.
Yes.
The other big issue, we did a survey for the conference board, and we've had a lot of HRDs in focus groups, and we couldn't use all the data for simply because some of it was just so incendiary. But we're getting HRDs saying that you know, more than half of my top 200 or 300 are obsolete. They're obsolete because their style of management is more, you know, it hasn't adapted to the modern world. It's not distributed leadership. They're trying to I describe it as they're trying to control more and more, but achieve less and less. And the other thing is they are unable to think systemically. And a lot of the stuff the problems we see are that neither the leaders nor the functions are able to think systemically. And coaching at its root is a systemic activity. We help people to see themselves in the systems of which they're a part. You know, and I talk about HR being full of HR bling. So stuff that, you know, that isn't worth anything, is pretty useless, but it looks nice and shiny. So, you know, succession plans. You know,
Yes.
no, succession plans aren't worth the paper they're written on. Nobody takes any notice of them. Anyway, one company I went into, they said, "Oh yes, we did have a succession plan, but when we actually looked at it, we said we got bench strength of 4.5, 4.5. Looks good. Then when you looked at who would actually take the jobs and how many of the people were the same people, and how are things changing anyway every year in terms of what were the important jobs, the whole thing was a complete farce."
Yes, yes, yeah. That's interesting. I mean, that, to my mind, that brings us back to the idea of conversations, because the value of succession planning is in the ongoing conversations that you're having, rather than in some defined plan, which, you know, given the nature of change and the speed of change, is irrelevant the minute you put it down on paper.
Succession plans and things like that are dangerous, and a lot of HR analytics, I call them bananalytics because they use so
Yes.
They're distractions from the conversations that people need to have.
Yes, yes, yes.
And even formal appraisals, you know, tend to
Yes.
be a distraction from the conversations that people really would like to have but don't dare.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Something else to hide behind, so as not to have those meaningful conversations. And I like to think of coaching as a series of cascading interventions. So
Yes.
you can in a corporate environment, you can have a coaching relationship with an individual where you're helping them with a specific skill or issue that they've got.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite, you know, you can be nice and specific. You don't have to get too much into the systems, but then you can help this client see themselves in their systems and their ability to influence the systems, and how the systems influence them.
Yes, yes.
We've come up with a new word recently, which is mistake holder. So
Right.
it's the people whose lives are screwed up because of the mistakes that you make.
Yes, yes, yes,
There's an awful lot of those. But
yes,
the second level is the systems. The third level is helping that team leader build a coaching culture in their team,
yes, yes, yeah.
so they could get a different team dynamic. The fourth level is actually coaching that team leader and the team together.
Yeah, yes, yes.
The fifth level goes beyond this and looks at teams of teams, and particularly in terms of large projects, you know, they are composed of teams of teams. So we've been doing a lot of work around flocking and tools to help teams of teams come together in ways in which coaching can actually support the conversations, both formally between the team structures and informally the substrates. And it's the informal ones that are more important.
Yes, yes. Interesting.
And then you go beyond that to organize to clusters of teams, you know, to a bigger set of teams and teams, to organizational consulting, you know, coaching, and I talk about the macro system coaching.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So
That,
how do we, when you've got people, you know, people fighting over resources, how do you
yes,
actually have use coaching in situations like that where you can actually resolve? And it's a kind of mediation at that level, but I
yes,
think it's mediation plus.
yes, yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, you talked about the focus on the individual in terms of reward systems, and in terms of projects and major projects, there's the kind of focus on the individual, and then there's the focus on the employee or the team of the client or the contractor. So there are a number of boundaries where things kind of break down and where people are driven by either their personal self-interest or their organizational self-interest. So
Absolutely. And I think another big barrier is consultancies. We've got all of this. Well, let's not mince words. We've got a lot of crap from consultants,
yes,
um, unevidenced nonsense,
yes,
which people nonetheless accept because it feels good or sounds good. Yeah,
yes,
and I'm thinking of Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions, which is deeply flawed because it assumes that all the things that go wrong with a team are internally generated, when of course that's not the case by any means. Or you've got the Tuckman's forming, storming, norming to performing. There's no evidence that this is right. In fact, the one study that's been done really to is found that only 2% of new project teams actually went through all this. Um,
yes,
and it's not surprising when you think that the Tuckman model was based on a desk study of cases written elsewhere of people, primarily of people in groups, not teams, for suffering from clinical depression.
yes, yes,
So yeah,
yes,
are we going to? We're creating this house of cards, for of what we're trying to do, of what we're going to do with teams, all on a bunch of people who are mentally ill. Um,
yes,
and I begin to think, well, okay, I've seen some boards of directors who are, or chief or executive teams who one suspects are all mentally ill, but doesn't seem to be the right place to start from. We can
yes,
assume people are at least compos mentis. So I think there's a lot of stuff there that we need to be, that's getting in the way of organizational agility. And we've just launched a whole new program called Rapid Teaming, based upon the fact that when you form a new team, particularly in a large scale project, it's probably only going to be there for 6 months at most.
yes,
But you can't afford to wait 6 months for it to hit performing. It's got to hit high performance from day one. So
yes,
how do you do that? And coaching is a key part of the answer. With
yes,
good coaching, you can help them to have the conversations they need that truncate all of this dancing around each other and so forth, that
yes,
create psychological safety and honesty.
yes,
And
yes,
so I see real expanding roles for coaches
yes,
in this whole area of rapid teaming.
yes, yes. We've talked a lot about coaching, and I didn't want to neglect mentoring. Major Project Association, we launched in last year. At the beginning of last year, we launched a peer mentoring program,
Mm.
and I spoke to some of the first cohort, and that was extraordinary. I mean, the experience they had, and the way in which the opportunity, and in some ways creating the space and time for the opportunity to talk to somebody who had similar experiences to you in a very different organization was just life affirming and transformational.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think peer mentoring is so powerful. We've one of my favorite programs that I'm involved in. In fact, we've got a celebratory evening tomorrow night around this. Is for the CIPD, the personal organization, and that's for aspiring HR directors. So we're linking the aspiring HR director with very experienced HR directors. And the learning that takes place in that is enormous. And as
Mm,
part of that, we did a study where we went out and asked HRDs. What do you know now that you wish you'd known before you actually became an HRD or on the way to becoming an HRD?
mm.
And the one guy said, "Don't do it." And I think that was tongue in cheek. But the data, the things that you don't think of,
Yes, yes,
so powerful. Just and really a large part of mentoring. Mentoring never tells people what to do. That's complete.
no, no,
but it does raise awareness. And there's this big difference between giving somebody some context,
Yes.
helps them with the quality of their thinking, and giving somebody advice, which does the thinking for them.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Clearly, one of the benefits of peer mentoring across our network, for example, is the ability to get feedback from somebody who has no vested interest in what you're doing. You know, there's no kind of status, there's no kind of, well, I better be careful what I say to you because that might reflect it. I mean, it's genuine, authentic kind of feedback.
Yeah, it's and that's why you can relax into it. You can have the psychological safety.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Good. Um, we've got all sorts of emerging opportunities and threats. We've got AI and automation and quantum computing, and indeed the whole sort of concept of the digital human, which seems to be sort of emerging.
How do you know I'm not a robot? Yes,
Indeed, um, and
but a robot wouldn't have the bad sense of humor that I do. But that's
I think it probably could do. Um, and you talk at the end about the end of the book about the importance of coaches and mentors, in a sense, reinventing themselves and reflecting the need to change. And I wondered, how would you like to see coaches and mentors responding to this kind of inexorable acceleration of social, economic, and technological change? What should we be doing, and what should we be doing in 5 years or 10 years' time?
well, I think increasingly it's going to take over a lot of the rote tasks. So sort of grow model coaching has a limited future. You can already get you can go on this chat GP or GPT or that, and you can get almost as good a result as a typical basic level coach would. It's so anything that is repeatable, routine, it follows a process, is going to be a threat from AI. AI can even fake sympathy better or empathy.
Yes,
And so we're going to see that. But if you think about wisdom, there's skinny wisdom which computers can do as well or better than we can. So that's the basic expertise in a particular area. There's broad wisdom, which is the experience you get from life. Now you can't do that with a computer. People, you cannot emulate that
yes,
experience and the conclusions you draw from it. And there's meta wisdom, which is all about putting together all sorts of different exposures, experiences, knowledge bases that you have. The AI is good at doing one thing. The extrapolation into much wider areas is not so easy for AI to do. And there are some very good reasons for that in terms of how a machine works and creates a concept or a response, and how the human brain does it, because the
yes,
human brain is linked in very different ways.
yes, yes,
Um, and one of the metaphors that I've seen is how many dimensions there are. A thought, for a human having a thought which lasts a fraction of a second, but that thought may be, I've seen 13, 15, 20 dimensions. You
yes,
can't do that yet.
yes,
But so it's looking at the technology and saying, how do we partner with this?
yes,
And,
yes,
the partner is important, because if we allow the computer to direct us and tell us what to do, we're no longer doing in charge, and we're no longer doing the coaching or mentoring. The computer is doing it for us.
yes, yes,
So it's a case of how do we find the ways in which it's going to enhance us and enable us to focus more on what we do really well.
yes,
And one of the things that we're finding is that that as a coach, if you're going to grow up and mature as a coach, you need to use yourself more, your own emotion, your own feelings, your own intuition and instinct, all of that stuff. If you use the computer as a prompt,
yes,
and something where you could inquire, that's very interesting. I wonder what the client's feeling, what emotions the client's going through right now, for
yes,
example. Then the computer will be able to say, well, just analyzing their facial expressions and their tone of voice, this is the client's anxiety level here.
yes, yes,
So what's going on here? So now you have a way of saying, okay, let's pause a moment. Let's just investigate. Let's talk about this. You know, can see that you're anxious now. Where
Yes.
do your anxieties arising from? So we can
Yes.
go so much deeper.
Yes.
But of course, being very careful not to go over that boundary into therapy,
Yes. Yes.
which is going to become, I think, even more nebulous as we go
Yes.
on.
Yes. And I guess, I mean, wonderful as Chat GPT seems to be, it's obviously curating answers from stuff we already know. So it's working on the known body of knowledge, and increasingly we're required to use our imagination to project forward and think, as we have been talking, think about the future, and how will things be in the future? What will you need to do in the future? And I guess um, for the moment, anyway, that's something that is just limited to us humans, and artificial intelligence cannot do that. I mean, it can present exciting images, but it can't really imagine in the way that we can imagine as humans.
Absolutely. I mean, I like to imagine what the possibilities are, where we can go next. Now, I had great fun doing virtual reality coaching, I have to say. Um,
Yes.
that
Yes.
is mind blowing, and that's going to get better and better. And we won't have to use those clunky great Oculus glasses, the headsets and things. So it will.
Yes.
But I think. Well, to give an example, we created an app around about it's the only complex adaptive systems model of teams
Hmm.
for team coaching, and what it does is to identify the 6 critical pillars, if you like, or elements that intertwine to create performance, poor or good performance. And nothing is clean, so something's pushing you one way, something another. There's patterns here. Now we can only at the moment do this in 2 dimensions. So we
Yes.
can look at the interactions between purpose and motivation versus internal processes, for example.
Yes.
So we can see that dimension, and we can examine a number of cases, and we can see recurring patterns here, and we can begin to make connections. What the computer will be able to do from diagnostics and from for the analysis of cases is help us to it will project a 3D image in front of us. So we're taking from 2D to 3D that
Yes.
will look at the interactions between these elements.
Yes.
So it'll be
Yes.
like a hologram type thing. So I can't do it on a two-dimensional computer screen, but we will be able to have just project into the room a holographic image, and we'll be
Yes.
able to rotate it and say, well, that's interesting. Look at the issue from this perspective and from that perspective. So
Yes.
I think there's a whole bunch of tools out there, not yet invented,
Yes.
but we are inexorably working towards.